Well, let me begin this screencast by promising I will keep this as brief as possible, but I thought I would provide a visual and audio supplement to two of the more important documents that you'll be reading this week on tips for your observations, and then also tips on how to collect field notes. So this one is a bit more, I don't know, attitudinal or orienting in some ways. So I thought I'd talk about the tips and suggestions first. So Lincoln and Guba wrote this book. Do I have it nearby? Let me see. I'm going to pause. I'm going to look for this book. Okay, I'm back. I was probably not even gone for you. But I have with me here, this is the one book. Lincoln and Guba wrote a book called Naturalistic Inquiry. If I could show you all of my marginal notes on it. So it's a very important, a seminal book when it comes to conducting observations, alongside this book by Reinhardt's Feminist Methods in Social Research. So you want more information on these books, goodness, please email me, contact me. I would be happy to talk your ears off about the origins of where a lot of our modern ideas about the nature of observation come from. Those two books are sort of they're seminal texts. They're canonical, and so a lot of my perspective on how to conduct an observation come from them. They're not new, as you can see, 1985. They're much older than all of you, but these ideas, they're so strong that they really haven't been changed too much over time. So what observation permits us to do is to move back and forth in time. I love this idea, to reconstruct the past, interpret the present, and predict the future, all without leaving your comfortable armchair. And that armchair is the place where you sit when you do your observations, but it's also the place where you sit when you make sense of your observations. Some tips. I've done a lot of naturalistic inquiry in my own scholarship. Let me go big for a second. I had a really cool assignment as a grad student in my doctoral studies that asked me to observe the same place every day for, what was it, 10 weeks in a row? You could take weekends off. It was like, average sort of 4 or 5 days a week. And I did a cemetery nearby the school that I was attending. And so going to a cemetery, and I usually stayed in my car so I wouldn't be too disruptive to people there, because they were there for obviously very serious reasons. But I learned so much. There was a guy who came every single day and had lunch at the grave marker of his wife. There were people who I saw once. There were people who tended to the grave markers, people who didn't. And so being able to sit there and make long form observations was really, really cool. Taught me a lot about sort of human nature, and that's really kind of what I'm wanting you to get at as well. I mean, yes, this assignment, the observation essay, is about the use of technology, but I think it's equally important to not lose track of the people utilizing the technology. The feminist methods and the naturalistic inquiry that I just mentioned, it does come from a humanist perspective. We want to understand human behavior and motivations a little bit. So I don't mind getting esoteric like this. I don't want to boggle you with too many highfalutin ideas, because at the end of the day, this is a 200 level English class. So let's maybe talk about the attitudes I would like to see you absorb as you prepare your observation. So planning it is one of the most important aspects of it. And these first two tips are right there. Not only do you want to keep, I'm going to have more to say about this, but the purpose of the location that you're observing is going to be intrinsically tied to the arguments that you will develop. But you need to also think about what time of day your observation is. Okay, if you're going to a place that serves breakfast, and they're known for their breakfast, maybe like the Cameo Grill, place that I eat too often. Well, if you go later in the day, late afternoon, early afternoon, where breakfast isn't as popular, well, that's going to affect the nature of what you see, right? So you want to think about your plans. Okay, also where you'll sit, where you'll do your observations. What you expect to find versus keeping an open mind. The more you plan, and that's sort of developing steps, but it's also developing a plan sort of mentally. So more on that in a bit. So I don't like this word visualize, because I think it has a sort of a hippy dippy connotation to it these days, but all the same. a mental game plan for how things might go. This is also tied into, do I have it open here? Yeah, your brainstorming. Your Blackboard brainstorming assignment it's got a question in here as well. What do you expect to observe? I know it's pretty small. I can maybe try to zoom in on that. What do you expect to observe? And that's, so that you're going to be forced to do this here soon enough. But if you if you go into that assignment with that sort of with open eyes, things just go so much better. An important tip, almost a requirement, is to stay out of the way. I have done assignments like this in the past, and students often, not often, but there are students who say, well, I observed somebody taking a selfie, and so I went up to them and I asked them, why are you taking a selfie here? You've got to stay out of the way. You want to be as unintrusive and unparticipatory as you can be. The fact that you're there means you are disrupting the observation site in some ways that we can't ever get back, but you can make an effort to stay out of the way. So you are a sociological instrument. See yourself as a telescope, a microscope, a camera, whatever sort of observational sort of device you want to, metaphorically apply here. But it's one that is silent, that is out of the way, that it doesn't interact, it doesn't work to disrupt what's being observed. Okay, it's important that you consider the layout of the site, and that's really tied into the place's purpose as well. If you're observing a fast food place, I would imagine technology use is going to be really high while people are waiting in line, and maybe even higher after they've ordered but before they've gotten their food. Waiting in line, it might be a lot of sort of looking at the board and thinking about what they want to order, but once the food is ordered, there's maybe nothing else to do. You understand what I'm saying? So consider the layout of the site. Keep an open mind. Be willing to learn what your observation wants to teach you. It's okay to make peace with what you expect to see at an observation site, but you can't let that flavor what you actually observe. You have to work with the data that you gather, not the data you want to gather, but what you actually come away with. Okay, important stuff. In a sort of a physical sense, just keep taking as many notes as you can. Never stop recording. If you're taking your laptop and you're typing it out, try to always be typing something. Don't worry about typos. Don't worry about spelling words correctly. You're just getting raw data at this point when you're collecting your field notes. So if you can write without looking down, even better. But try to capture as many moments as you can. Lots of people, I don't really teach this too much, but lots of people do tallies. They collect. I saw X number of phones. My mind doesn't go in a in a quantitative direction very much. I'm more of a soft skills, psychological, motivational, I'm a soft sciences kind of guy. If you're more of a hard sciences person and you want to have like a bunch of raw data in terms of how many iPhones you saw versus how many Androids you saw, that sort of thing, by all means go for it. I don't teach from it too much because it's not something I feel as though I'm particularly good at, so I can't be as helpful. But I have had students sort of dazzle me with their in-depth, more qualitative-ish analyses, and that certainly can happen if you continue to record. Okay, I think sounds are they're underestimated and they're under-recorded when it comes to observation. So keep your ears open as well. It's easy to observe lots of things, but if you can pick up on any sounds, sometimes silence can be a real big teacher as well. Okay, so different note-taking strategies. Ooh, 2 spaces after the period. How 1999 of me. Running notes that are anecdotal, or or you organize them into categories. Field experience logs. Those are more like you capture your own thoughts. You almost like write a journal to yourself after you observe. Those can be very effective. Chronological accounts of behavior. If you go for like say like a restaurant again, if you go for like breakfast, lunch, and then dinner, if you can organize them that way, you can maybe make interesting points about the time of day that your location is active or not active. Okay, context maps. Again, some of you, I'm not as much as I love art and talking about aesthetically pleasing things, I'm a terrible artist myself. My kids are both far better than me, I'm happy to say. But if you're someone who can get a lot out of drawing maps and trying to sketch out interactions, oh goodness, I would love to see those. I think those can be extremely effective. So give them a shot if you're able. Okay, then sociometrics, those are just, it's a fancy word for interactions between people. Okay, they can be strangers, they can be people who are there together, they can be employee and customer, there can be a transactional nature to the interaction, but if you're really good at capturing a dynamic between people, that sort of thing it lights up the page. It's extremely compelling to readers. Okay, and again, this assignment is just kind of three different parties involved, all right? Your community or your location, okay? And then there is your perspective on it. And then, of course, there are, the participants themselves. So don't lose track of those three parties. So to that end, you want to make sure that you keep track of your own impressions. Like if you're surprised by something, maybe like an exclamation point. If you're curious or something confused you, maybe a question mark. So you can make up your own codes. If I thought one standardized code worked better than all the others, I would recommend it. But just like the writing process, you have to kind of do the thing that works best for you and figure out ways to work within those tropes. Kind of the same thing with note-taking. You have to figure out what works best for you. You can't really know what you're good at in terms of observations until you do one. I hope that many of you will conduct several observations. There's going to be a handful of you that are too slow to choose a site, then are too slow to plan an observation, and then you kind of do an observation one night and you kind of have to write the essay the next day. Those essays are always C's and D's. Don't be one of those students, would be my number one bit of advice. Go to your site as often as you can, or observe your community as often as you're able. A handful of observations is going to just pull so much more data, because at the end of an observation you can plan the next one. It's very, very it's really, really important. It's called the constant comparative method. You can see the words there, the constant. I don't put in the assignment because I feel like that's, again, getting a little too highfalutin, but constant comparison. You take what you've observed and you constantly compare it to what you continue to observe, if you understand my meaning here. So as you're wrapping up an observation, just a quick note at the end that sort of suggests ways to go forward from here. Next time I should really key in on X, Y, and Z. Those sorts of little tips, places where you can sort of springboard off into future observations, will make, if you do this at the end of observation 1, you'll make observation 2 so much better. If you do it at the end of observation 2, you'll make observation 3 a whole heck of a lot better, and so on ad infinitum. Making a plan is going to be your friend. So these tips for the essay itself, we don't need to get there just yet, but I'll have things to say about that when the time is correct. But an open mind and a busy writing or typing hand is going to, those things are going to carry the day for you when it comes to an effective observation. Letting go of preconceived notions, thinking about what you expected to see versus what you actually saw, will give you sort of a framework to operate within your argument. A way to push forward expectation versus reality. Of course, I'm sure you guys know that better than me about Instagram expectation versus reality, that sort of thing. So sort of the same kind of thinking is involved here. So hey, look, it's a screencast that doesn't go the full 15 minutes. What a lucky day for you. Send me your emails. I want to know how things go. Good luck and thank you.